It's 184th day of Ukrainian heroic war, and it is Untitled Chapter. We continue our series of briefings at Mediacentru Lviv. Today we have Associate Vice President at GlobalLogic, Ihor Kostiv. Could you please tell us about Ukrinform and its cooperation with you, especially when we talk about these new stamps. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you for invitation. I want to say thank you to Ukrinform, Ukrainian Postal Service, because we have issued a new stamp together with Ukrinform to mark and to acknowledge actually volunteers, not only our volunteers who are in IT sector, but they donate a lot and they provide a lot of help and support to the armed forces of Ukraine, and they also provide humanitarian aid to different missions in Ukraine. So here you can see a copter, and usually it is something which is related to IT industry as such, and it actually means that that IT employees started donating a lot into this sector. And we also have a flower, a sunflower. We want to express gratitude to Ukrinform for this initiative. Very often we gather different information in our company, and we understood that our consultants have already collected and donated more than 15 million hryvnias for different initiatives and different campaigns related to the armed forces of Ukraine and humanitarian efforts. In general, our company GlobalLogic, it has donated more than 500 million in terms of different humanitarian efforts and providing support to armed forces of Ukraine. I also want to ask Iryna Mud, a consultant at GlobalLogic, to tell us more. So could you please give us more details as far as donations from IT sector are concerned, and well, who donates a lot? Well, first of all, I would like to explain more about volunteering in our company. So we work with different projects, but our consultants are also initiators of different groups of volunteers. In the beginning of the war, we decided to have a separate TV Telegram channel, and there people posted different information about donations. We have a separate channel where people could help each other with accommodation, because remember that very many people who moved from other cities to Ukraine, they faced this difficulty. It was not easy to find housing for them. We also help with transportation. Well, people self-organize through Telegram channels of volunteers, and they found people who could have helped them. So we have more than 15 million hryvnias. Our engineers collected through volunteering this sum of money. There were different initiatives which were also part of volunteering movement at our company. On the day of Ukrainian embroidered shirts, we managed during several hours to collect 100,000 hryvnias, and we made different souvenirs. We managed to collect 100,000 hryvnias, and we gave the money to the armed forces for Ukraine. We also participated in another initiative, the National Bank of Ukraine. We had small boxes, and every day people leave their money, their coins, and these are some minor steps, but they also help with our global effort, and it is about our contribution to something bigger. I would also like to tell more about our initiative with the stamp, because it is really our initiative. It is our collaboration with Ukrinform, and we are hopeful that all volunteers were actively engaged in raising money for the armed forces of Ukraine will receive this stamp. We also have a short video with stories of our people. And in this short video, you will see some highlights of stories and donations for the armed forces of Ukraine. So could we please play this video now? To the Independence Day of Ukraine, GlobalLogic engineers will share the stories of their personal contribution into Ukraine's struggle for
Долучився до
victory.
купівлі джипа для
So
підрозділу
I
ЗСУ, який
joined the
нині воює на півдні
initiative
України.
for
В
raising
складі
money
цього
for
підрозділу
a
служить мій
Jeep,
батько.
one of the units of the armed forces of Ukraine,
З
because
лютого по
my
серпень
father
перераховував на
is on the
допомогу
front
ЗСУ і
line
трішечки
right
на
now.
гуманітарку
From February
більше півмільйона гривень.
till August, I was collecting money for the armed forces
На
of
честь вибухів
Ukraine.
на авіабазі в Криму.
I wrote an article for Wikipedia after explosions in Crimea. I also have held webinars on Java and different technologies. I built solar power stations, which actually help to decrease CO2, which saves 2,500 trees. In my apartment, there are IDPs from Kharkiv region, and they don't have to pay for this. I make power banks for the armed forces of Ukraine. We have quadricopters for intelligence. We have a Ukrainian flag that you can see from the distance. We also gave Starlink for the armed forces of Ukraine. I also want to tell you about Taras, who joined the armed forces of Ukraine during the first days of war, and he is fighting for Ukraine in southern direction, and he is sending his greetings. One child who was evacuated from Mariupol was really sad because they left their books at home, and I bought these books and gave it to the child. My husband joined territorial defense units, and then he joined the armed forces of Ukraine, and I also managed to help with very many needs that the army has. My son makes bracelets, and the money that he gets goes to the armed forces for Ukraine. I gave a drone to the armed forces of Ukraine. I turned motorcycles into electric motorcycles for the armed forces of Ukraine. My house is 5 kilometers away from Hostobel airport. At 11 on the 24th of February, there were dozens of helicopters of the enemy. Then for 2 weeks I was in occupation, and I managed to get evacuated on the 10th of March. But I left my Renault Duster there, which was a very good friend to us when we were traveling all over Ukraine. So the invaders damaged it, but it was not critical damage, so we decided to repair it, and now this car is on the front line to take a revenge on those offenders who damaged it. There is no doubt that Ukraine is going to prevail, that Ukraine will be independent. Happy Independence Day. So here you could see just a small part from what we are doing, from what our people are doing. Some people donated 500,000 of hryvnia, some people gave their cars, and some people they take small steps helping the Ukrainian army. What about the numbers of IT employees who are supporting Ukraine? And maybe actually we have some people who join the armed forces of Ukraine who are fighting. I don't really have precise numbers, but from the statistics that we have, I think some 2-3% of consultants of IT companies. Generally, to talk about our company and market, we have very many people who are actually have weapons in their hands and protect our country. So what about those IT projects which were put on hold, and what about these changes in the trends? So how has the IT market changed due to the war? Yes, I think it is difficult for some companies, especially smaller companies, which didn't really have a lot of variability, if I may put it this way. And IT market is focused more on the central and western part of Ukraine, which are relatively safer territories. There are some companies which have not been affected. Well, for GlobalLogic, we actually managed to grow a little bit thanks to our clients, our portfolio, and the support that we have received. But by and large, an IT industry, as any other industry in Ukraine, can feel this pressure and is faced with challenges. We are trying to overcome them, and it's good that the government of Ukraine helps us to do this. And we are preparing for business trips in India, and for 7 weeks, for 7 days, I'm sorry, a consultant can go on a business trip to meet a client. I think that this time span is enough to go to Europe. It's not really a long period of time if you want to go to the US, because the very travel takes a lot of time. Then you also need some time to adapt, so that adds another day. And then you meet a client, and then you need to go back. Then we have different time zones, and that gives us already 2 days. And then you also need some time in case anything happens. For example, there is a plane delay, and then these 7 days are not really enough. That is why we hope that the government will extend this time span for 2 weeks. But I think that even if we start with 7 days, that is already a good sign. And also, it would be great to have more support in terms of booking of people, because there are some people who are very committed, who try very hard and are engaged in humanitarian projects. That would be really good to reserve them on the one hand for them to be able to continue volunteering, and on the other hand for them to continue working with clients, because the army is winning the war, but the army also needs economy, and our army needs economy which gives some results, which really helps the army to be alert, to be strong, and to fight with our enemies. It's very important that the IT industry and its employees support Ukraine, donating a lot. So, what about the revenues, the income? If you can talk about IT industry, maybe there are some international companies which are ready to help local companies. Well, international companies are helping us. So, our clients actually they managed to keep this portfolio in Ukraine in the same scope as it was before. So we as a company, we remained on the float, and we even managed to grow a little bit, and I would really like this trend to continue. And we as a company, it's possible for us to stay afloat because we have many clients from abroad. Ca- we have good possibilities and resources, but for other companies, it's much more difficult for them. And looking for new clients is also challenging. And it can be explained by the fact that we don't know what's going to happen with consultants who are going to provide some services to this company. Is there any anticipation in terms of the possibility of cooperation? Because we don't really have the certainty. If we had more certainty, then it would be easier for us actually to have more new orders in Ukraine and to develop the market. And then, as far as donations are concerned, could you please remind what are those areas or fields into which IT industry is donating to? So what kind of humanitarian support, the army, what people donate where they like it best. So here we can talk about the armed forces of Ukraine and different humanitarian foundations, and Повернись Живим Foundation, Pritulas Foundation, and others. The US foundations, well, our consultants also cooperate, and our clients, they actually help together. I also have some more names: Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, Nova Ukraine. They also receive some funding from companies or from our clients or consultants. So, what is needed today to stimulate, to incentivize the IT sector to donate uh, into the armed forces of Ukraine, volunteering? I don't think that they need further intensification. They are significantly motivated, and we are Ukrainians. We live in this country. We take care of our country. I think that we need a little bit more support in terms of us being more predictable, for us to have a smoother communication with our clients, to be able to receive new orders, and to make sure that economy of Ukraine grows. What do you think? What is going to happen after we win in terms of the IT industry? I think that it's going to become more powerful. We have proved to the entire world that despite the war, we can provide services and we are a reliable partner. We can provide high quality services and timely services. We, as an industry, we manage to show that we are strong, that we can keep afloat, and I think that this trend is going to be preserved. So we had Ihor Kostiv, Associate Vice President at GlobalLogic in Ukraine, and Iryna Mud, a consultant at GlobalLogic. Thank you. Please follow us at resources of our media center, and let's